So if a business associate agreement is executed and the clinician is the business associate, then they are taking on all the responsibilities and liabilities of a business associate under HIPAA, which include all of the pieces around policies and procedures and breach reporting and data management and um, liability as well.
Welcome back to the podcast. Before we get started with today's episode, here's something most therapists don't realize. When you work for an online tech company, you're essentially paying them $2,000 to $4,000 per month for the privilege of being exploited. In our upcoming training on November 4th with Person-Centered Tech and Strom Consulting, we're going to talk about how these tech companies are exploiting therapists and client data and how you can protect yourself. We want to empower you with information so that you can really understand when you are exposed, what the red flags are to look out for, and to understand the contracts that you are signing. This is going to be a really detailed training, and I highly recommend it. If you can't attend live, sign up anyway, and we'll send you the recording. The invitation is in the show notes, or you can go to zynnyme.com to learn more. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You know that Miranda and I love to do little chats between just the two of us talking about what's happening in the mental health field. But today we decided to invite our dear friend and colleague, Laith Dalton from Person-Centered Tech. So this is going to be a little bit of a bigger coffee chat between the three of us. I'm really looking forward to it. Welcome, Liath.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really looking forward to this discussion with you both. As always, anytime we get to kind of geek out over impactful considerations and look at what folks need to be considering and evaluating. So I'm excited for this chat.
I'm sure
Miranda,
it's
how
going
are
to
you
be a
feeling
great
today?
three-way today.
There you go. Well, this
So-
originally was born out of, we have an upcoming webinar together, but whenever we get together, we could talk for hours. And so we thought we would do this podcast.
Yes, as a preview, right? And because the questions and considerations related to this topic are active and growing by the day, right?
Yeah. So what is this fabulous topic? We as business coaches, Kelly and I get questions all the time where somebody is growing their private practice and they're saying, "Oh my gosh, I was just thinking while I grow, while I'm figuring out the marketing, I was just going to do a little contract over here. What if I heard about this great place, Spring Health, or what about Grow, or what about Rula, or what about Talkspace, or what about Alma, or what about Tava?" And over the last 5 years, it's been wild the amount of names that have like increased on this list. And it's been a really interesting transition of watching what this new landscape is doing to therapists and to the profession. And there's been a lot of things that like I missed as a business coach in terms of like really checking in that Liath caught of how complicated these kinds of relationships can be in this, and I think specifically in this VC backspace, right? Like this is a new thing for us. This isn't the same as, oh, I'm working for this group practice over here, or I'm working for an agency or nonprofit over here. Like that's where we come from
Yeah.
as a profession. Is your options are nonprofit, some kind of agency, a private group practice, or doing group practice on your own. If you want to do therapy, those are your options. And then even as a private practice therapist, the questions were about, should I get on this directory? Like, and back in the day when I started, there was like the ethics of like, is it even okay for me to be on a directory? Is it even okay for me to have a website? Like those questions being asked. And now suddenly we're like in this other space where I'm hearing people talk about these contracts or these companies as their bread and butter. And I want to talk about
Mm-hmm.
later a little bit more, but this idea that like, oh, this is how I'm going to get fed while I do this other thing. And I don't think these are really the bread and butter contracts that you think it is. I don't think this is like the beautiful, nourishing piece. I think they're actually like
Mm-hmm.
quite dangerous, a lot of them,
I
unfortunately.
think like 15 years of doing this, whenever someone was starting or they were struggling in their private practice, right? If they're starting, it was sort of like, could I get a part-time job? Could I go work at these places? Like you're saying, the mentality is, what can I do in order to bridge the gap until I can build my full practice? Or when someone was struggling, maybe the default would be, maybe I should get on panels, right? The panic
Mm-hmm.
response of like, oh, I'm not full, I should get on panels, or I should get like a part-time supplement until I can get the practice going. But these AI companies, the venture-backed tech companies have changed the landscape that now we default. I've even seen therapists post, now I have to go to these places in order to
Mm-hmm.
fix the issue in my practice, which is an interesting mindset shift. We're seeing therapists feel like this is the only option, no longer turning inward and saying, what can I do? What is in my power to shift? But the power has gone back to these larger capitalistic structures to be the
Mm-hmm.
solution. And that's like the bigger, that's what's so, I didn't catch that. Right. It took a minute to see like, oh, we are changing the way we see how we can build our practices, and our power we're handing over to these structures. And so I think it's important to look at who created these structures, what they do.
And I
And
just want to
why?
comment on that regarding what Kelly said. And specifically, it's this weird chicken and the egg, like the snake eating its tail, where
Mm,
people
Mm-hmm.
say, well, the reason I can't do a practice is because these companies exist.
mm,
And the reason I have to go to this company is because it exists, and not like, again, I keep saying like these companies would not exist without your labor. Like they require your labor. So there's this like weird thing of these companies exist, so I can't have my private practice. I can't actually have a sustainable income. But also, these companies cannot exist without your expertise. Like
right.
this is not there's not enough therapists to go around. Like these things are not necessary in any way, shape, or form.
Right. And I think as part of that, these platforms are very adept at putting themselves out there as solutions to the pain points that people have in launching and building and then sustaining a practice, right? And they
Adept and
have
financially backed. I think that's the other thing, because
yes.
money, yes, they're able to be in front of.
Right. But they're not just saying, "Oh, we can help you get a full caseload." A pain point that a lot of practitioners have is managing the billing and admin side of things. And also, this is occurring in the context of getting paneled or getting credentialed being a huge hassle and time consuming process. And so if you've got a platform saying, "Oh, we take care of all of that for you, we can expedite it, you'll get higher rates," people are like, "Oh, this is the solution." Because we're also operating in a context where, like, the burnout of being a provider and holding space for what we need to be holding space for now, as well as just being a human being in the current world, is such a lot that these sort of too good to be true sounding solutions, we're not questioning enough of, wait, this sounds too good to be true. Is it really too good to be true? And, foreshadowing here, yes, it is too good to be true. These are not the magical solutions to all that ails or is challenging in running or building a practice, right? And I'd say this is analogous to what we see with AI for clinical documentation, right? It can be helpful, but it is not the be all end all. It's not really the magical solution that's going to remove burnout and free up massive amounts of time. So we need to be critical in how we evaluate these things. And I am so appreciative of how you both have been so clear in like naming the bigger picture and the sort of power and financial elements that are at play here, because it's really easy to just focus more on the minutia of it. And I think, yes, the minutia and like the contract specifics and pieces we're going to be talking about are incredibly impactful. But as a values based profession, therapists need to be looking at the values alignment when working with platforms or service providers, and looking at the impact that has both on them individually, their clients, and then the profession as a whole. Because I feel like we're also in a time of there being a lot of sort of existential angst, you know,
It's
so
interesting,
that's
right? Like these tools are meant to alleviate our pain and reduce burnout, but actually it increases our risk management, which let me tell you what causes burnout. Like fear and trying to read these contracts, understand them, trying to like stay on top of terms and conditions. Miranda and I just pulled our podcast from Spotify. We cut all accounts because they changed their terms of service, right? So always staying on top of all the tools you use and what they potentially could do, that's going to cause burnout in a different way now. So now, so that's kind of like why I'm so glad that we're talking, is to really empower therapists so they can decide how much risk management do they really want to take on in their practices. What do they really feel adept to handle and comfortable with? It's not to shame people for using platforms. It's not to like say like we should have nothing to do with any of this stuff. It's about being really informed and fully understanding its impact.
My favorite thing was like we were having this like chat a month ago, which is what speared us going like we need to have a training, and it's gonna have the three of us and an attorney. Like, yeah, we're gonna have the four of us together, and it's going to be amazing. But the space of we were going through a spreadsheet that we have at Me that was like all of the different players in the market, and some of the sneaky things, like there's a recruiter that recruits for Gotham, and you're like, oh, Gotham is a mental health company. Yeah, it's for BetterHelp. There's one that does for an LGBTQ directory. No, that is actually BetterHelp. So they've gotten really sneaky in the recruiting tactics or what have you. So we were going through like this master list we have of all these companies, which we're adding to all the time, and all the questions that we've been, keeping track of. Is it 1099 or W-2? Do they actually provide you the clients? Like, is there a fee for you to be using it? Like, is there a, hey, we'll pay you $3,000 to get started, all of that kind of stuff. And of course, do they provide a BAA? I think was on there. And then but which direction is the BAA? Right. And it was like, and Kelly was like, well, it's a BAA. Like, no, there's a BAA. And we're like, and Liath was like, no, which direction was the BAA? And we started talking about that aspect of who is the person who's actually taking on all of that risk in terms of HIPAA.
Let's guess.
Like, oh, wait, I think of, we got a BAA, so HIPAA, check the box. And in fact, getting a BAA might actually mean that you have 50 other boxes to check, right? Because if you just find a BAA for this company saying that I'm responsible for HIPAA, then I'm going down this process. And also I signed a BAA saying I'm responsible for HIPAA. And then they told me what to do. And then they have me doing something that's not HIPAA compliant. Well, what does that do?
Exactly. So the issue with BAA directionality and let me actually back up and set the scene. If a W-2 relationship is present, then you are workforce of the entity that you are employed by. And workforce is a HIPAA term, meaning that you are subject to and governed by their policies and procedures. They are the HIPAA responsible and liable party. If you, as a workforce member, violate HIPAA, you're basically violating it on the covered entity's behalf, right? But when it comes to contractors, there's this weird gray area, and this existed before these platforms and has been something that has had sort of confusion, good faith misapplication in a private group practice context as well for a long time, but that has increasingly been shifting, which is good. But what the conflict is that a contractor, as the healthcare, the direct service provider, the direct healthcare provider, cannot be a business associate, right? For the purposes of the relationship, because they are the direct service provider. They are therefore the HIPAA covered entity. So their relationship with whatever this third party is, be it a group practice or one of these platforms, is that platform or group practice is acting as their business associate, because what they're doing is providing services to the healthcare provider. And things get really conflated and set up a scene where parties are going to be like, oh, not it. I'm not the one responsible for that. And that's where the sort of the devil's in the details of the agreement, but also it goes above and beyond that, because in a lot of these cases, the directionality itself is flawed in such a way that the who is defined as what party to the agreement is totally out of alignment with how HIPAA defines covered entity and business associate and so on, which it doesn't mean that there can't be any HIPAA enforcement. Because thankfully we have seen that businesses that are acting in a business associate
Can
role.
I pause you for a second, Liath?
Yeah.
I felt
Absolutely,
myself,
sorry.
as you're describing all of this, I got lost in the sauce. Can we go back to this piece? Can you give an example where it's like, hey, I'm somebody and I go to work for this company. Let's say I'm a 1099 for something, I don't know, Grow or Rula or fill in the blank online tech company. And I sign a BAA, right? Then the directionality is that I'm responsible, right? I'm saying I'm a business associate of that person, not that they're my business associate. What does that mean?
Good question. It doesn't align, first of all, with who should be a business associate and who is a HIPAA covered entity, because these platforms are not healthcare providers, right? Not directly. So they should not be the covered entity and should not be contracting out healthcare services to a business associate who they don't have direction and control over. That's where that piece is flawed. So if a business associate agreement is executed and the clinician is the business associate, then they are taking on all the responsibilities and liabilities of a business associate under HIPAA, which include all of the pieces around policies and procedures and breach reporting and data management and liability as well if they violate HIPAA and it causes a breach for the party that they have a covered entity relationship or that is the covered entity in that relationship. So
like
it's taking on.
As an example, right? There's a lot that's happening right now with people's sessions being recorded and that material being put into a transcript format and the transcript being saved by the tech company, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I signed a business associate agreement with that company, right? And I'm using that company's terms of service,
Mm-hmm.
and that transcript that the company is saving is not saved in an appropriate way, who has the liability?
Technically, both will under HIPAA have responsibility if there is a BAA in place, but it's going to be dependent on all the particulars of the terms of service. The challenge is if you're acting as a business associate but you're required to use their tools, first of all, that violates what how employment law classification works. And that's really one of the fundamental problems is that as a business associate, you are responsible for upholding HIPAA, but there should not be direction and control over what tools you use, um, when you work, how you work, modalities, all of those pieces. And what we
Which is
see in
just like,
practice is that there is, right?
I'm just waiting for when people are going to organize and there's going to be a labor lawsuit. I have a friend who works for Rula and was telling me that they now have to do these scaling questions for every session. If they don't do those scaling questions, they'll be less likely to be referred to. They will not get more clients until they are implementing, these scaling questions. And I'm just like, and I asked them, like, do you believe in these scaling questions? They're like, it's sort of one of these things that, like, I have to do it, but it's not like clinically, they don't feel needed, but it's what the system is asking. And yet they're a contractor, right? So it's like,
Right. It does not fit with employment law classifications, particularly in states that have the ABC threshold instead of using the sort of broader and more complicated 20 factors of control that the IRS uses.
but we just keep
But
coming back
it's
to this same issue as that. As long as we say it's okay, nothing has to change, So
right. And it's totally not okay and doesn't make sense. And particularly, like the risks have just magnified so much more with the inclusion of AI in so many of these platforms. And those risks are a lot broader and more significant and consequential than just in the context of HIPAA and how HIPAA applies. Those are really coming down to ethical and risk management considerations from an ethics and like clinical perspective as well. Because the impact of these recordings that is all for data commodification purposes. So how is that ethically aligned, right? You're not having the option to opt out of it. Clients can't opt out of it. That's a non-starter right there, because there must be informed consent. You must understand how the AI is working, what is happening with the data, whether or not and how bias is playing into it, right? All of those things. But if you can't answer the questions because you don't understand the infrastructure because they're not making it clear, or you can't opt out and clients can't opt out. And then that data is being used for who knows what purposes. And we also keep seeing that they do not understand de-identification correctly. So they're saying, oh, it's all fine. Like, yes, it's, monetized, that we're going to monetize this data, but it's going to be de-identified or anonymized first. But they don't actually understand what that means in HIPAA terms, so they're not following it correctly. That means that client info is absolutely getting out there, that protected health info is getting out there, and ultimately the clinician is ethically responsible for that, right?
Right. And our boards say that, our ethics codes are saying that, like APA is coming out with addendums about AI and what it means for the clinician. And across the board so far, it is the clinician is responsible. The clinician must understand the technology they're using, must understand like the implications. They are responsible. Like I looked at a note documentation software and they do risk assessment, right? You put in the data and it says this client is at risk for harming themselves. But ultimately, you can't go back and say, well, this told me, this said it was a risk. You are the clinician, you have the ultimate say. Whatever tool you use, they're not responsible, you are. So we can't put our heads in the sand and be like, well, they're responsible. They know more than me. I trust this better than me. That's where we're going to end up in some huge issue.
You wanted to use another word there.
It's interesting, right? Like, so the same investors in Ash, which is a AI therapist bot, and is the same investor in Headway. But when you ask and you try to see where the data comes from, it's not clear. No one's being forthright about exactly where these session notes are coming from, these sessions that are de-identified. But yet there's a lot of cross-pollination.
Specifically, and I didn't hear you say this, and maybe I missed it in the conversation, but Ash says we're built on the largest database of actual clinical work. Like they are saying that, and it just happens that we've got cross-pollination of the same investors of Headway and over here. And like, well, where did you get that data?
And if you dig, you cannot find where. But if we're all participating in these platforms and we all don't really understand how the data is being used, we are creating the thing that's trying to eat us. We're feeding the beast.
Exactly.
So there was somebody there's a Facebook group called Fit Check for Therapists, which I highly recommend. And people are talking about like kind of privately, hey, here's my experience. They can do anonymous posts and get feedback of what is it like to actually work at these companies. And you'll see like people are like, this is a therapy mill. Oh my gosh, this is burnout. Oh, this is really tricky. Here's the question that I asked when I really started talking with the recruiter, like, what does this look like? So for example, there was somebody they were interviewing with something called our ritual. Sorry, I have trouble with those R's. But they have recordings that are held indefinitely of those couple sessions. The couples can opt out, but we don't get those type of clients. We screen them out, is what the recruiter said to this person, right? Interesting. And the recordings support AI to analyze, record, and monitor progress. And specifically, they quoted their person as, "We are a tech company, and it's a main part of our business." How many of these companies that call themselves a mental health company, that they are saying, hey, we're trying to make mental health accessible. When you push back and you say, are you actually a medical supplier? Are you a medical company? How many of them are actually saying, actually, no, we're actually just a glorified directory service. We're just an online, we're just creating a bridge. We're just doing this technological stuff. We're no. We are not the mental health. We're not responsible. We're not responsible for any of these things. And yet,
Right.
if we were to talk about therapists even 7 years ago, we're having whole conversations about 0.2% of a credit card payment and not wanting that amount of money to go over here, or hey, this online directory is $35 a month. Is it really worth it? And suddenly we're giving all of our data and all of our labor to these places that are making thousands of dollars a month. And again, that have raised millions of dollars of funding. They have millions of dollars. Those people that work there, the marketing managers, some of the customer service reps, all of the CEOs and CFOs and all of the supervisors, all of those people are making more money than any of you.
Oh, yeah.
They're working less hours, they have better benefits, and they are making more money. If you want to go and if you really want to make good money at one of these companies, go apply as a marketing manager.
Right.
$90,000, $110,000, $130,000 a year as a marketing manager. What are you doing giving them your labor? It's back to this like idea of the bread and butter. And I was having a conversation with AI on my way to the gym yesterday. And I was like, this is like maddening to me to hear people say bread and butter, and explain the whole situation. And I was like, it's not like, help me say this in a way that makes more sense. And AI, as beautiful as it can be, right? Pros and cons to everything, was like, oh, it's actually like they're eating moldy bread. It's making them sick. And I was like, yes. Because when we do the math and we look and we say, and again, your number is your number, whatever this looks like, wherever you live. If you find that your number as a business owner to be able to give good clinical work to everybody who comes to sit on your couch virtually or in person that week, if everybody's getting the same level of clinical service, you have time to do your progress notes. You actually are not making yourself sick. You're not like overexposing yourself to trauma where you have to be seeing your own psychiatrist once a week and you're constantly adjusting your meds and your autoimmune condition things are spiking and all these other issues aren't happening. If we're actually creating something that's sustainable, and you find that number for, this is just for easy math's sake, is $100 a session is what you need to be making to like make that math work. And if this person is offering you $35 a session, it means that you need to see basically 3 times as many clients as is healthy and sustainable for you. And it means that you are now not working within your scope of competence. Your scope of competence isn't just about what you've been trained to do. It's about what you can actually deliver. And if I hear one more person talking about like evidence-based and CBT this or whatever the thing is, without talking about the actual like delivery modality of the human and your like ability to actually do the thing, because your 40th client, evidence-based or not, is not getting the same experience as your first client of the week. And honestly, your first client isn't getting a great experience if you worked 50 or 60 hours last week and you've just been bed rotting and doom scrolling all weekend because you're in the midst of burnout and you come in and you're just like, let me just get this over with. And you're just watching the clock. It's not working. It's moldy. It's making us sick. Like not just in like a general sense, but like in like a physiological sense. Like the amount of therapists that I talk to, that their bodies are revolting. Their bodies are saying something is not right. And we're not listening. And these companies they have venture capital funding and they can say, oh, we have a $3,000 signing bonus. We have a $1,000 signing bonus. We have a $5,000 signing bonus. And like all this money kind of coming in, and somebody goes like, oh my gosh, you know what? I really need $5,000 in my bank account right now. I really need $3,000. It'll work for right now. It'll be a little bread and butter while I figure out the rest of it. But when you need 3 times or twice as much or even 1.5 times as much as what you can like ethically do, you can't add something on the side. This is not a side income. This is not like a stream of income. This is not working.
Well, and it's not a way to build a full practice either. Right. I'm saying it doesn't work as a side piece, but it also doesn't work as your main piece either.
Yeah.
Because of all of the ethical and risk management pieces, but also because so much of what we see around the control of how the care is delivered, what the clinical work is, and limitations on what providers are supposed to do or not supposed to do, including with like high acuity clients or the modalities they're allowed to use or told they must use, etc. That is not setting up a situation where there are going to be good client care outcomes either. And there have been more and more stories about that with a lot of these platforms of clients being like, oh my gosh, I had such a terrible experience, went through multiple therapists. And I don't put that on just like, oh, they got a bad therapist or like someone who was going through a hard time. I attribute a lot of that to the combination of requirements and limitations that the platforms themselves are putting on folks. So, I think your point of it's moldy and we need to evaluate whether or not it should be on the table is so important.
Yeah. If you, if you look, I was just looking like when Miranda was talking about go work for the marketing. So one of these companies is like $150K to do client outreach or community outreach, right, in the marketing department. And the advertisement for finding a therapist specific to 1099 prefers CBT, PE for trauma. Like it lists specific kind of modalities. Why is this though? Like you got to understand the thing that's playing out here. Insurance companies are like, we're going to use this middle person. We're going to offload a lot of our stuff. They have to drive the outcomes. We'll pay them more, right? I saw a therapist on TikTok or a video that was saying, I'm so mad. I was getting 100 an hour and I found out this company is getting 210. Listen, y'all, someone's got to make money, right? And it's not going to be us. They're not going to be like, here, you take all the money. We don't need to be profitable. But if we would do far better if we had advocated for ourselves for a raise from the insurance company. What are they looking for? They want the outcomes. They want to see that we're effective. And we have an issue as a field of where we haven't been taught how to prove efficacy, how to track those clinical outcomes. We're having to learn it post-doc, post-master's degree, those kinds of things. We can take our power back. You could go to the insurance company yourself. You could advocate for a higher rate. But at this point now, these companies have come in and said, like, we'll unburden you of all of this. You pay us a little more. And what they pay them, saves the insurance companies millions because now they don't have to mess with it.
Here's the other thing to think about is like, what does an insurance company say is a good outcome? There are two things, right? If, there is something that if they can look at something and say, you didn't help this person, right? That's a bad outcome. And a lot of the contracts say, if you were providing care and you were not properly documenting the material, then they can do clawbacks. So it's actually a good outcome for them if you have bad documentation, because it means that they can take the money back. Second part that is a good outcome for them is if they have fewer expenses, right? They have fewer expenses. So we have the top insurance companies. I'm on this email list called Baker's Payer Issues. And it's specifically a newsletter that is for health insurance providers. And it gives all the news for the health insurance companies and does webinars for them on their side of things. So
Ooh.
yeah, I highly recommend it, Liath. Sometimes it makes me really angry and mad in the morning and I feel like I need to take a nap, but also it's very helpful to see what's happening on the other side. But they are talking about like, hey, what are the best things happening in AI right now in insurance companies? And they're like,
Mm.
hey, look, we can do value-based care. Have you heard about value-based care, Liath? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Value-based care. Wow, we can make sure our members are getting better service and we can reduce our rates. Like we can reduce our costs. And ultimately, who is the insurance company like privy to, like who do they have to report to? They have to
They're
report
shareholders.
to three people. One is the shareholders, and those are the biggest, loudest people. In fact, United Health shareholders came back and sued United Health because they weren't denying claims enough like they said they were going to, right? They have to be beholden to the insurance commissioner. The insurance commissioner in each of our states is part of who is telling them what they're allowed to increase these rates for and who they can buy up and how convoluted these systems can get. And then third, they have a requirement to the members, the people who paid. And it sort of is, and in the moment, it's in that order. You know
Right.
who's not on that list? You as a provider. You as a provider, if you go and read that contract, there's nothing in that contract saying that they need to provide you a service. That contract is one-sided and it's everything about what you need to do. Unless you're in a state like Texas, where Texas put a law on the books and said, hey, if people give you a claim and it's been properly completed out with no errors, you should be able to pay them within 30 days. And if you're not, you're going to get fined. So guess what happens in Texas? People get paid quickly and those dynamics, right? But you get into a Facebook group and people start talking about these issues of a particular company or a particular reimbursement or insurance, and they go, oh, insurance is so easy. I don't have any issues. There's no conversation about what state are you in? What laws have been passed in that state? What's happening with your insurance commissioner? So people go into a Facebook group and they make decisions based on these, like, well, other people said it's so easy. Well, it's not easy for everybody. Each of us is our own business owner. And again, it goes back to this, even these scenarios, right? I'm in the group on Facebook that I watch where people are like, wow, I've been working for this company. I've been loving it. I referred to so many people to it for several years. And wow, they just increased. They want me scheduling 33 clients per week. Oh, wow. My pages got cut by 30%. Oh, wow. This happened, that happened, this happened. Well, now that they have you hooked in, right? And they had all this money to attract you, to give you bonuses, to make you happy, to get you to attract your friends, to give you money if you brought your friends over. Now they have to figure out how to actually make this profitable. Well, you're a 1099 contractor. They just adjust the contract. And then they hope that enough therapists stick around that they don't have to make any changes.
So here we are.
Yes, here we are.
And I think this is why I think the training that we're going to be doing is going to be so impactful, because this is just like a nice little broad swipe across the field of seeing how it's not just so simple, y'all, And I wish therapists really, it's not about fear mongering. It really is truly like a wake up call. We need to take our power back. We need to protect ourselves. We need to protect our clients' data.
Yes.
I am a former client of therapy. I want my data protected as well, and we need to be adept at understanding HIPAA, the risks, and the implications of where we put our labor and what systems we participate in.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to be getting into the nitty gritty of, and really looking at like all the practical application pieces, specifically naming what are the questions you should be asking, what is the implication of the answers that you get? And then what is your rubric for then making a decision based on those answers that aligns with your values, your ethical and HIPAA responsibilities as a clinician? Um, and I think we're all really passionate about empowering the professional community to make informed decisions and be equipped with the knowledge and support to be able to navigate that. So we're looking forward to y'all joining us for that. And like last piece, because I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. When you were talking earlier, Miranda, about the recruiters who are recruiting for BetterHelp, and but under a different name, and even framing it as like this is a LGBTQ oriented service and so on. The reason that it is being done under another name is because we have already seen the incredibly egregious practices of BetterHelp, right? And the FTC fines assessed against them for their like flagrant misuse of PHI that they had access to, and using it for marketing purposes and reselling and like all kinds of really problematic shenanigans. So we have to be looking at who these companies are, what their ulterior motives are, not taking things at face value either. Um, these are not companies that are mental health therapists creating a solution for their fellow professionals or for the community, the populations they serve. These are opportunistic tech companies. And so we have to be asking the questions. We have to be looking for transparency. We have to be pushing back and ultimately, like you say, taking the power back.
All
Well,
right.
Just,
For anybody who's still
a
listening, take a
light
breath.
conversation in a light world.
Take a breath. Take a moment. Maybe write yourself a little note. And maybe that note says, I do need to work for an online tech company, but can I find the least evil one? Right?
Yeah.
I Googled that for health insurance companies the other day as an employer of a small business. So I was like, which is the least evil health insurance company? Like where if we're gonna provide health insurance, like where can we like stack the deck
Yeah.
of giving more money to places that are doing well? Like, can we get really clear about, back to Liath's point, our values, about the value of our labor? Can we know that there are so many options out there, like truly? And y'all, we could get rid of BetterHelp tomorrow. We can get rid of BetterHelp tomorrow. There are more than enough group practices who really want to take good care of you, who want to hire you and pay you well and help you do really good clinical work. You can go work for another therapist. And while maybe on one side, because again, BetterHelp lies also about how much money you're going to make. It doesn't just lie about how it's going to use or protect the client's health information, but it gives you a calculator and says you can make $110,000 a year. And then you get into it and you realize, wait, I'm working 70 hours a week and I'm still only making $97,000 or $90,000. Like, where did the math go? There's a class action lawsuit regarding that issue happening right now as well. But like, take your labor someplace else. There are other people who want to hire you who will pay you better than what BetterHelp is paying you. And even if they paid you just a little bit better, or even if it was a W-2 and it was the same amount, a W-2 at the same amount pays better than what a 1099 is, because we have to take it. Like, there's some math that's in here, y'all. So like, stop comparing apples and oranges and being like, well, I'm making more money here. When I worked for the agency, they only paid me $27 an hour, but BetterHelp is paying me $35 an hour and, promising me $110,000, at the end of the day, when you looked at all the pieces with having actual time off and having health benefits and all the things, unfortunately, that $27 an hour nonprofit job was probably better for you than that better health job, right? I'm not saying it was good, but I'm saying, can we start to topple one at a time places that are not good for clients, are not good for us? If we move our material, if we move our labor away, maybe we can start to make a change. Anyhow.
Absolutely. So join us on November 4th.
We'll put details in the show notes. You can go to our site as well. We'll have links up and everything. So thank you, Liath.
Absolutely. Well,
I'm so glad there's someone like you in the world doing this work.
Yes. That's a very mutual feeling. So lovely connecting with both of you as always. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us for our chat. These are fun to do and just to get into keeping on top of what's going on and finding some silver linings and finding the places where we can make a change. So thanks y'all for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Come see us on our Training with Liath. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode. As a reminder, we have a brand new training and panel coming up November 4th that we'd love to have you join us for, all about how tech companies are exploiting therapists and how you can protect yourself. We're going to empower you with a ton of information, and you're going to hear from 4 experts all about the platforms. Join us. Check it out in the show notes or go to zynnyme.com to learn more.